Tensura X Wednesday by Rimuchi. Time for the real SHT. Alright, you little degenerates, you've been waiting long enough. You thought this was just Rimuru walking around Nevermore, messing with Wednesday and dunking on normies. Nah, it's time to introduce the real queen of this story. If you expected some half-assed, generic romance where Rimuru just flirts with randoms and moves on, you're dead wrong. His love interest isn't just some side character, she's a goddamn force of nature. She's seductive, playful, and absolutely terrifying when she wants to be. Their chemistry, pure packing chaos, power plays, tension, dark seduction, it's all here. And before you ask, yes, she'll get way more screen time than others. Some of y'all might have thought Wednesday was gonna be the main focus, but guess what? This fanfic ain't a copy of the Netflix show. Key events will still happen, but dialogues, character personalities, and relationships, all rewritten. So, strap in, shit's about to get way more intense. Third-person POV. The night sky over Nevermore Academy was an endless abyss, painted in deep shades of indigo and black, pierced only by the cold silver glow of the full moon. Wisps of mist coiled around the Academy's Gothic spires, clinging to the ancient stone walls like spectral fingers. The courtyard below lay in eerie silence, the cobblestone pathways barely illuminated by the flickering lanterns that lined them. Nevermore had always been a place of mystery, a sanctuary for outcasts, yet tonight, even the very air felt heavier, charged with an unseen force, as if something far beyond the realm of ordinary monsters had settled within its walls. Inside the academy, tucked away in its most shadowed corridors, was Rimuru Nightshade's room. Unlike the rest of the dorms, his space was an embodiment of darkness itself. Black velvet curtains draped over the towering windows, filtering the moonlight into thin, silver threads. The scent of aged books, old blood, and something darker, something ancient, lingered in the air. The room was elegant yet haunting, a Gothic masterpiece of obsidian and crimson hues. A fireplace crackled in the corner, its embers casting dancing shadows against the walls. And yet, despite its usual stillness, there was an unfamiliar presence inside. Rimuru, leaning against the doorframe, regarded the intruder with unreadable crimson eyes. His expression was calm, too calm, though beneath that cold exterior, curiosity stirred. It was rare for anything to surprise him, but this was unexpected. On his bed, sprawled with the confidence of someone who belonged there, was a girl unlike any he had ever seen. She was otherworldly. Long, silver hair cascaded down her back, strands shimmering like liquid starlight under the dim glow. Her skin was flawless, smooth as porcelain, reflecting the fire's glow in an almost ethereal way. And her eyes, deep, piercing violet, held an unreadable depth, swirling with ancient power and an almost predatory amusement. She smiled, slow and deliberate, as if savoring the moment before finally speaking. "Welcome back to our room, Rimuru Nightshade. It's a pleasure to meet you." For a fraction of a second, an eternity in his mind, Rimuru simply stared. His mind, razor sharp as ever, processed everything. Her aura was powerful, far beyond that of a normal vampire. Yet there was no hostility in her presence, only amusement, intrigue, and something else. Something deeper. Then, with a smirk, he chuckled. "How bold of you to claim this is our room," he mused, stepping inside and letting the door shut behind him with a soft click. "And who exactly are you to welcome me like this?" The girl tilted her head, her expression playful yet composed. Instead of answering, she stood from the bed with unhurried grace, her movements elegant, deliberate. As she approached, the air between them grew tense, not with hostility, but with something far more dangerous. Expectation. She stopped just before him, so close that the faint scent of night roses and something darker, something intoxicating, reached his senses. Her delicate hand rose, fingers brushing against his chest, light, teasing, yet commanding all at once. "I've heard many things about you," she murmured, her voice smooth, silken, but carrying an edge of mischief. Her violet eyes gleamed as she leaned in slightly. "And now that I see you up close, I must say, the rumors don't do you justice." For once, Rimuru found himself caught between amusement and intrigue. The sensation of her touch, the sheer presence she carried, it was enough to stir something deep within him. But he was no fool. With a slow smirk, he took a step back, putting distance between them. The motion was effortless, playful, yet it made a statement, he wouldn't be so easily thrown off. "I see. Flattery. Or just curiosity," he mused, folding his arms. "More importantly, since when did I get a roommate? No one mentioned this to me." The girl's smirk widened, a flicker of amusement dancing in her violet eyes. Principal Weems made the decision herself. She thought we would make good friends. Her tone was teasing, almost mocking the words. Did she now? Rimuru chuckled darkly, shaking his head. How thoughtful of her. Then, his gaze sharpened slightly. Still, I don't recall ever sensing you enter my room. That shouldn't be possible. At this, the girl let out a soft, knowing hum. That, she said, is one of my family's specialties. Rimuru exhaled through his nose, the corners of his lips curling in faint amusement. A secretive one, aren't you? His golden eyes met hers, searching, testing. Fine. Then tell me, who are you, really? At this, the girl finally stepped back, placing a hand over her chest in an almost regal fashion. There was an unmistakable air of pride in her stance, as if her very name was something to be revered. I am Raven Draculena, she announced, her voice carrying weight. The second heir to the Draculena bloodline, direct descendant of the one true Dracula. A glint of superiority flickered in her eyes. Not some lesser vampire, mind you. True royalty. A pause. Then, she smirked, tilting her head slightly as she regarded him once more. I usually don't associate with lesser beings. The words were spoken with casual arrogance, yet beneath them, there was something else. A challenge. A test. But you, Rimuru Nightshade, you are different. Rimuru chuckled, low and dangerous. Oh, his voice was deep, playful, laced with an unmistakable seductiveness. He took a step closer this time, flipping the game back on her. So, the mighty Raven Draculena thinks I'm different, Now, that's interesting. His voice dropped to a whisper, his breath ghosting near her ear. I wonder, how different do you think I am? For the first time, Raven hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Just enough for him to see it. A faint blush dusted her pale cheeks, though she quickly masked it with a scoff, stepping back with a flip of her silver hair. TCH. Don't get ahead of yourself, Nightshade. But Rimuru only smirked, his crimson eyes gleaming with victory. So, she wasn't as untouchable as she pretended to be. Interesting. Very interesting, Rimuru thought. Rimuru walked past Raven without giving her a second glance and headed straight for his bed. He sat down, leaning back casually as he eyed her with mild interest. So, he started, voice smooth and unhurried, what exactly are you doing at Nevermore Academy? Raven crossed her arms, tilting her head slightly. I was forced to come here. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. Forced? Why? She hesitated for a brief moment before exhaling. Because, her gaze flickered with something unreadable before she straightened, her voice shifting into something more confident. Because I can't fully control my blood manipulation. Then, with a smirk, she added, an ability that only the Dracula bloodline possesses. Rimuru's lips curled into an amused smirk. You mean like this? Without waiting for her response, he casually bit his finger. A droplet of blood welled up, and before it could fall, it twisted and shifted, forming into a miniature dragon figure in his palm. The small creature coiled in his hand, its wings flexing before solidifying completely. Silence filled the room. Raven's violet eyes widened, shock flashing across her face. For the first time, her composure wavered. That's, she caught herself, narrowing her eyes as she quickly masked her surprise with feigned indifference. How do you have that ability? Rimuru chuckled darkly, rolling the small blood dragon between his fingers before it dissolved back into nothing. Nightshades have their own secrets. His crimson eyes gleamed. Especially me. Raven clicked her tongue, regaining her composure. HMPH. Whatever that was, it's nothing but a low-level trick. Rimuru tilted his head. Oh, then what about you? What's your special ability? She smirked, stepping forward with a challenging glint in her eyes. Unlike you, I have abilities that are truly special. Rimuru rested his chin on his hand. Then why don't you show me? Taking his words as a challenge, Raven's smirk widened. Fine. Watch closely, Rimuru Nightshade. I'll show you why I'm better. As she prepared to demonstrate, Rimuru spoke in his mind. Hey, Raphael. Less than, yes, master. Greater than. Run an analysis on her. Less than, understood. Would you like a full report? Greater than. Yes. Less than, analysis complete. Would you like to see the results? Greater than. Show me. A translucent screen appeared before Rimuru's eyes, displaying Raven Draculena's full status. Name. Raven Draculena. Race. Pureblood Dracula, second heir of the Draculena bloodline. EP value. 30 million. Special abilities. 1. Crimson Sovereignty. Absolute control over blood, allowing her to manipulate and drain the blood of others at will. 2. Eclipse Step. instantly moves through shadows, disappearing and reappearing in the blink of an eye. 3. Sanguine Kiss, drains the life force of others with a single bite, healing and strengthening herself in the process. 4. Nocturnal Requiem, creates an eternal night where her powers are amplified, making her near invincible in darkness. 5. Vampiric Hypnosis, a mesmerizing gaze that can bend others' wills, making them susceptible to her commands. 6. Blood-forged Blades, forms weapons from her own blood, which are highly durable and laced with curses. 7. Black Moon Ascendance, a berserk state where her power grows tenfold, her vampiric nature fully unleashed. Rimuru's smirk deepened as he analyzed the details. All right, Raven, he said, dismissing the screen from his vision. Show me what you can do. Raven's eyes gleamed with determination. Prepare to be amazed, Nightshade. Rimuru simply chuckled, leaning back on his bed. The atmosphere in the dimly lit room grew thick with tension as Raven smirked, stepping forward with confidence. She extended her hand, her fingers curling into a loose fist. You asked for a demonstration, she purred, so don't blink, Rimuru. Rimuru watched with mild amusement, his crimson eyes gleaming with curiosity. He had seen countless powerful beings before, but there was something intriguing about Raven's arrogance. A faint, eerie glow surrounded Raven's body as her blood surged through her veins with unnatural speed. Her deep purple eyes flickered with power as she lifted her hand, a single drop of blood forming at her fingertip. The droplet expanded, twisting and morphing into a blade, sleek and deadly. The moment it solidified, the air around her pulsed with raw energy. Blood-forged blade, she murmured. With a flick of her wrist, she swung the blade, slicing through the air with precision. The sheer force of her movement created a sharp gust of wind, causing Rimuru's hair to shift slightly. His expression remained unreadable. Raven's smirk widened as she lifted her other hand. Shadows slithered beneath her feet, forming tendrils that wrapped around her ankles before vanishing. Eclipse step. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the darkness. A whisper of movement behind him made Rimuru glance over his shoulder just in time to see her materialize from the shadows. Fast. She pressed the edge of her blood-forged blade to his throat, her smirk turning victorious. Impressed yet, Nightshade? Rimuru didn't flinch. Instead, his smirk deepened. Not bad. Raven's smirk faltered slightly. Not bad, she echoed. He leaned closer, his voice low and teasing. You'll have to do better than that. Her pride flared, and with a flick of her wrist, she dismissed the blade, letting the blood return to her veins. Then let's turn things up a notch. She stepped back, her hands glowing with a dark red aura. The temperature in the room dropped slightly as an unnatural darkness spread from her feet, creeping up the walls like living ink. Nocturnal Requiem. The entire room was swallowed in pitch-black night. The candles flickered out, and even the moonlight from the window was consumed. An oppressive weight settled over them, making it feel as though time itself had frozen. Rimuru raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Within the abyssal darkness, Raven's voice echoed. In my domain, my power is absolute. A chill ran through the air as she suddenly appeared inches from him, her eyes glowing like twin embers in the void. Vampiric hypnosis. Her gaze locked onto his, the intensity behind it almost palpable. Any ordinary being would have crumbled under her influence, their will bending to her command. But Rimuru simply chuckled. Cute trick. Raven's eyes widened ever so slightly. Before she could react, the darkness around them began to shift. No, it wasn't shifting. It was bending. Rimuru raised his hand, and with a mere thought, the shadows that once belonged to Raven twisted to his command. Now, let's see how well you handle your own abilities. He snapped his fingers. The darkness lifted instantly, revealing the room as if nothing had happened. Raven stumbled slightly, her breath hitching. Impossible. She barely had time to react before she felt a strange sensation in the air. Rimuru lifted his hand, and to her utter disbelief, his blood oozed from his palm, forming a blade identical to hers. Blood-forged blade, he murmured, inspecting the weapon with an amused smirk. Raven took a step back. Without warning, Rimuru vanished. Not just disappeared, he completely melted into the shadows, reappearing behind her in an instant. Eclipse step. Raven barely twisted in time, her instinct screaming at her. She turned to face him, only to find his glowing crimson eyes staring into hers. A cold, seductive whisper caressed her ear. Vampiric hypnosis. For a split second, her mind wavered. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but she felt it, the pull of his influence creeping into her thoughts. She clenched her fists. No. With a sharp exhale, she broke away, her breath slightly uneven. Rimuru simply chuckled, watching her with dark amusement. You're fun. Raven glared at him. How? Less than answering. The abilities have been copied and optimized. Your current proficiency exceeds Raven Draculena's by 20%. Greater than. Rimuru smirked. Good work, Raphael. Less than, thank you, Master. Would you like to demonstrate further superiority? Greater than. Of course. Without warning, Rimuru lifted his hand, and a deep crimson mist surrounded him. Raven's heart nearly stopped. That was Nocturnal Requiem. The darkness she had once commanded now belonged to him. The entire room was swallowed once more, but this time, the energy was far more potent, suffocating, and absolute. Raven gritted her teeth as she felt the pressure crush down on her. Then, as if to prove his dominance, Rimuru took it a step further. He raised his hand, and the crimson mist solidified into chains, wrapping around Raven's limbs before she could react. Her breath hitched. These weren't ordinary restraints. They were crafted from her own ability. Rimuru tilted his head, his voice low and teasing. Still think you're better than me? Raven struggled against the chains, her pride refusing to let her accept defeat. But deep down, she knew. This wasn't a battle she could win. Rimuru watched her with mild amusement before snapping his fingers, releasing the restraints. The darkness dissipated, returning the room to its normal state. Raven inhaled sharply, her body tense. Silence stretched between them. Then, Rimuru leaned in slightly, his tone playful. Well. Raven swallowed her pride, meeting his gaze. You, she hesitated before smirking, though there was a hint of begrudging admiration in her eyes. You're infuriating. Rimuru chuckled. I get that a lot. She exhaled, running a hand through her silver hair before stepping back. Fine. You win this round, Nightshade. He tilted his head. This round, she smirked. Oh, don't worry. I'll get stronger. And when I do, I'll make sure you acknowledge that I'm better. Rimuru leaned back on his bed, watching her with interest. I look forward to it. Raven turned to leave but paused at the door. Without looking back, she said, don't get too cocky, Rimuru. Next time, I won't hold back. With that, she vanished into the shadows. Rimuru stared at the spot where she had stood before smirking. This was going to be entertaining. Less than Master, should I prepare countermeasures for any future abilities she may develop? Greater than. No need, Raphael. Let's see what she's capable of first. Less than understood. Greater than. Rimuru chuckled, closing his eyes. Meanwhile, Raven appeared in her own domain, a room of black mist and swirling darkness. Here, she was alone. Here, she could think. Her breath was still unsteady, her eyes wide as the memory of what had just happened played over and over in her mind. He used my abilities, better than me. She clenched her fists. How did he do that? For centuries, she had perfected her abilities, honing them to a level unreachable by any other Dracula. And yet, Rimuru Nightshade had casually stolen them, replicated them effortlessly, and wielded them with even greater mastery. That shouldn't be possible, but it was. She collapsed onto the floor, if there was a floor in this space, and stared into the abyss. I lost. The words felt foreign on her tongue. For as long as she could remember, she had never lost to anyone. No one had ever matched her. She had always been the strongest, the fastest, the deadliest. And yet, for the first time in her life, she had been defeated. But strangely enough, it didn't bother her. In fact, she felt relieved. The weight she had carried her entire life, the expectation of being undefeated, was suddenly gone. She let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. For the first time, she wasn't standing at the top. And for the first time, she didn't mind. A small, almost amused smile tugged at her lips. Well, Rimuru Nightshade, you're something else. She closed her eyes, allowing the silence of her domain to settle around her. Nightshade, his clan isn't even a Dracula bloodline. They're vampires. Then how? Her eyes snapped open. Then how did he use my abilities? She had to figure this out. But not right now. Right now, she needed rest. She let out a long sigh. I'll think about it after I sleep. Her body froze. Her mind froze. I'm his roommate. Silence. Then, her entire face turned crimson. Without even thinking, she vanished from the void, reappearing outside Rimuru's room for a brief second before teleporting away again. No, I am not embarrassing myself tonight. Even as she disappeared into the night, her face burned with humiliation. In Rimuru's room, Rimuru lay lazily on his bed, smirking. She ran away, he mused, resting an arm behind his head. Then, In his mind. Hey, Raphael. Less than, yes, master. Greater than. What's the difference between vampires and Draculas? Less than. Draculas and vampires are similar yet distinct species. While vampires evolve through infection or magic, Draculas are a true bloodline race, a separate entity born with natural dominion over blood magic. Greater than. Then what about me? I am a ultimate vampire. Less than. You are an ultimate vampire, a being that surpasses even Draculas in potential. Unlike normal vampires, you are a direct anomaly, transcending their limits entirely. Greater than. Rimuru's eyes narrowed. So, in this world, ultimate vampires are like Draculas. Less than correct. However, you have not yet reached your final evolution. Greater than. That piqued his interest. Final evolution. At that moment, another voice purred into his mind, one far more sultry and teasing. Less than. Fufu, do you really want to know? Greater than. His eyebrow twitched. Seal. Less than. Era, don't be so cold. I am here because you're true SLFE asking me to find out your Oki. Greater than. Just tell me. Seal giggled before answering. Less than. To fully evolve into a true Dracula, you must complete 5 ascension trials. Greater than. 1. Drink the blood of an ancient pureblood Dracula. 2. Bathe in the crimson lake of eternity. 3. Defeat a high elder vampire in single combat. 4. Devour the heart of a Nightwalker lord. 5. Survive the eclipse ritual, a process that has killed every being who attempted it. Greater than. Rimuru smirked. That last one sounds fun. Less than. Oh, you're such a tease, but I wouldn't want to lose one of soul parts of my beloved to some silly ascension ritual. Greater than. We'll see. Then Seal left his mind. But for now, he had other things to focus on. Like his very flustered roommate. Smirking to himself, he closed his eyes. The room was silent, until the door slowly creaked open. Rimuru, lounging lazily on the bed, turned his gaze towards the entrance. Raven stood there, hesitating. Her arms were crossed, and her purple eyes flickered with an unreadable emotion. Rimuru smirked. What's wrong? Did you forget something? Raven clicked her tongue, looking slightly irritated but also embarrassed. I almost forgot, this is my room too. Rimuru exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. Sigh, you're hopeless. He pushed himself up from the bed, standing in front of her. Fine, you can have the bed until you get your own. For a second, Raven was silent. Then, no, I refuse. Rimuru raised an eyebrow, his smirk deepening. Oh, are you telling me a proud royalty like yourself is willing to sleep on the floor? Raven's face twitched. She glared at him, but he could see the conflict in her eyes. A Dracula, sleeping on the floor, that was beneath her. But accepting his generosity, that was just as humiliating. Rimuru chuckled darkly, taking a step closer. So, what's it going to be, princess? Raven's eyes burned with defiance, but after a moment, she let out a long breath. Fine, I'll accept the bed, but you're not sleeping on the floor either. Rimuru's smirk widened. Oh, and how exactly do you plan to solve that problem? Raven narrowed her eyes before grabbing a pillow from the bed. She placed it in the middle, dividing it into 2 halves. You take the left, I take the right. Simple. Rimuru stared at the pillow, then at her. His smirk turned downright devilish. So, you're already comfortable sharing a bed with a man you just met. Raven's entire body stiffened. Her cheeks flushed ever so slightly, but she quickly hid it behind her usual regal expression. That's not what I meant. Rimuru leaned in just a little. Oh, then what did you mean, Raven? She refused to meet his gaze. Instead, she crossed her arms and said, you defeated me. That means I can no longer see you as a lesser being like other vampires. Rimuru's smirk softened into something more intrigued. Ho, that's quite the way of thinking. Raven huffed, and without another word, she jumped onto the bed, settling into her side. Good night, and don't you dare touch me. Understand? She hugged her pillow tightly, her back turned towards him. Rimuru's eyes gleamed with amusement. Oh, I'll do more than just touch you. Raven froze. Her grip on the pillow tightened, and her ears turned bright red. Why you? But she refused to look at him. Instead, she buried her face deeper into the pillow, her body slightly curled up. Rimuru chuckled, his gaze lingering on her for a moment. She was interesting, powerful, breathtakingly beautiful. His smirk softened just a little before he laid down on his side of the bed. Closing his eyes, he let the silence settle. This was going to be fun.